Hello, welcome to another episode of the Meera Gandhi Show. We are here today in the town of Hudson, upstate New York, and our theme today is revitalization. Even in urgent migratory patterns, we notice that animals in the wild revitalize as they understand at a very core level their own basic needs. Very recently, in December, I had the good fortune of traveling to Tanzania with my parents and extended family, and we were able to observe these animals in the wild for long periods of time. It was clear to me on this trip, close to nature, that periods of activity like the lion hunt, for example, and feed are followed by days of inactivity or revitalization. As we think about this and explore the concept of revitalizing our lives further in this show, let's start with our cleansing breaths. Let's take 3 deep breaths together and chant Om. Are you ready? Deep breath in and release. Now, let's get ready to chant our 3 Oms. Find a comfortable place and take a deep breath. So take a deep breath in, and as you see, we can chant wherever we are, on a busy street, in a parking lot. Aum. 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 Deep breath in, release, open your eyes slowly. And now that the breath feels calmer, let us talk more about revitalization. Revitalization is defined as the action of imbuing something with new life and vitality. Today, we will speak to 3 wonderful guests on the Meera Gandhi Show, each with a unique perspective on revitalization. First, Tracy Young. She is a master hat maker and she's here in Hudson. Our second guest is from California, Montana Beutler from Heather James Art Gallery. And our third guest is architect Tarik Currimbuoy, who will walk with me in Hudson as we talk about revitalization in architecture and how that is connected to health. Now it's time for 3 tips today on revitalization. The first, make time to rest after periods of intense activity. This will help revitalize, rest the body, and bring it back into balance. Balance is the key to lifelong health. The second tip, things go in cycles. Once we understand this, we will know that a down cycle will soon result in an up cycle, exactly like the ebb and flow of waves. The third tip, use tools available to revitalize. Often, we have more tools available to us than we realize. Time out when we can take a break from a project. Chat with a friend who can give us good counsel. Eat something green. Or then again, a simple, well-needed nap. All this goes a very long way in revitalizing us. Next, we will speak to Tracy Young, a hat maker, an MBA from Boston University, one of my closest friends, an ultimate fashionista. Tracy has always loved fashion. I remember at Boston University she was always the most stylish to class. Today, Tracy has taken her passion and has turned it into a reality. Welcome to the show, dear Tracy, and thank you for having us here on Millinery Treasures.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Meera.
So, you have successfully revived this art form of hat making. Why this choice of fashion?
I know, I kind of fell into it. What happened, you remember, I always wore hats.
Yes.
And then I discovered at an FIT catalog, there was a course I wanted to take. And before I could take that course, it was on bridal veils. And I had the business of the First Communion dresses. I needed to take some entry-level courses at FIT, and I started doing it. I absolutely fell in love. 2 years later, I went for my certificate and decided that I wanted to open a hat shop.
I'm so glad that you decided to do this because I love hats too. In fact, earlier this year, you and we went to the Central Park Conservancy hat luncheon and I got to wear one of your beautiful hats, which was such a fun afternoon. We got to play. What do you think is the next best accessory to hats?
You know, when I think of hats, I always think of shoes. And I think that nowadays it's not about matchy-matchy and having them be perfect, but kind of that they jive and that they work together. And hats and shoes express oneself. And I think that it's kind of an indulgence, and we can switch them out and make them more fashionable as trends are happening than, let's say, a coat or a full wardrobe. So it's a little bit of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And why did you decide to open your operation here in the town of Hudson?
Once I was ready, because it took a while to kind of take the plunge, I looked at a couple of locations, and so it needed to be close enough so that I wasn't having a tremendous commute. I mean, I moved upstate into this area in order to avoid having a commute. So I looked at a couple of different locations, and as soon as I saw Hudson, I had been coming to Hudson for a while and fell in love with the place, between the antique dealers, a lot of creative types, and there's just an energy here. So when I started looking for a location, I wanted to create more of a studio than a hat shop, kind of like where, as an artist, I could come and create
and express yourself.
And people would come by appointments, and it would allow me to juggle and balance all my needs of life.
Tracy, do you have any tips for reviving old outfits in one's closet, since we're speaking about revival today?
Right. I think what's really important is that you take a piece and then marry it with something that makes it modern, because otherwise you look like you just stepped off of a historic film or something. So, like, let's say you have an amazing dress. Take a scarf or even a belt or the shoes, and by adding something modern that you just purchased, then I think it makes it more timeless, and that's how those outfits can work.
I love it. How has the style of the hat evolved?
Well, I would say every decade there is a hat or a style of hat that you'll see everywhere. Like right now, the millennials are wearing a lot of pork pie hats, and that's a hat style that actually came about in the 1940s. And a lot of times what happens is that the hat becomes classic. Like you think of Jackie O and the pillbox, or Humphrey Bogart and the fedora. And so it stays with us. And so over time, you can bring it out again and it looks classic and timeless. And I think that's the beauty of it. You find a hat that works with your personality and you own it. And then it becomes timeless.
Sort of like what we did at the Central Park
Exactly.
Hat Conservancy with the hat you created. It was so fun.
It worked because you put that hat on and owned it. Whereas
outrageous.
Other people come in, they're like, that's too much of a hat for me. Like, I can't wear that one.
Well, that was fun.
You know, and you just looked amazing.
It was fun. We had fun. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for being on the show. And your daughter Alex is here in your studio today. Would you like to introduce her to our viewers?
I would love to. My daughter Alex Content, who helps me frequently at the shop and wants to go into fashion.
Hey, Alex, welcome. So good to see you.
See you.
And thank you, Tracy. This has been amazing. Your studio here on Warren Street is beautiful in this town of Hudson. And thank you for being on the show, both of you. I love you guys.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Meera. Thank you for coming.
Now we will talk with Montana Beutler from the Heather James Gallery, located in Palm Desert, California, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We are so fortunate to have Montana on the show today. Welcome, Montana.
Thank you, Meera.
You are with Heather James Gallery that represents art and artists around the world. Tell us about revitalization in the art world.
Well, I think revitalization can mean a number of things in the art world. On a personal level, to revitalize one's own kind of space, you can do that with furniture, you can do that with architecture, but for me, a finishing touch of art that comes into your space can make you feel in touch with your own personal history, or perhaps beauty is your goal, or relaxation, or meditation. And artists and bringing in paintings and sculptures can really create your own space and revitalize that and make meaning in that space.
And what is currently trending? Is it sculpture? Is it art? Is it both? I feel like we're seeing a lot more sculpture.
Yeah, there's definitely a push on kind of installation art, right? And so going into a space and making it completely different, whether that's with textiles or giant forms kind of flowing throughout the space. I think that a trend I'm interested in, however, is in painting, and that revitalization in the art world sometimes happens historically, and looking at times in history that perhaps were lost and refinding these artists. There are female artists from the 50s, 60s, and 70s that are coming back into fashion. People like Elaine de Kooning, Lee Krasner, Helen Frankenthaler, that were perhaps overshadowed during their own history, but now we're looking back and saying, you know, this is worth digging into a little bit more. And so in a way, art and art history can blend, and new things come up all the time when we look back.
So talking about new things for our viewers, if they have art in their home and they want to revitalize it, how would they go about moving the art? I mean, do you take a favorite thing and move it, or do you move art according to like things that could be happening in your life? Can you advise our viewers as to how they would do that with their own art at home?
Sure. So a lot of my clients collect for different reasons. You know, I have some clients that only collect art that has birds in it, or clients that collect things only between the years of 1900 and 1920. So my suggestion to newer collectors or people looking to revitalize their space is to go to a lot of museums, go to a lot of galleries, find your eye, find what's the thing in the room that you're going to first, what is the energy that you want to create, and build your collection from there. And that can be very eclectic. You know, in our gallery we have things from the beginning of time until contemporary art. So you can put those kinds of things next to one another and create a new kind of conversation between them. But I think the most important thing is to focus on what's going to make you happy, what's going to bring you joy when you come home to it, and you know, create meaning from there. It doesn't have to be an outside influence. It doesn't have to be what everybody else thinks it should be. It doesn't have to be trendy. It should just be what you love.
It should resonate with your own energy at that particular point in time, and our energy is always changing.
That's right, and it's okay to change your mind. You know, it's okay to change your mind in the art world too.
So Montana, the revitalization we're seeing in the art scene all over the world, is it because of a simple case of economic growth? Is it a case of people having more leisure time because of digital technology? What do you think we can attribute this whole revitalization of collecting art to?
Well, I think it does have to do with, of course, the access to art, right? So with the internet age and with information about art and art history being so readily available, different towns that maybe before didn't have access to a museum might crop up. Museums no longer have to be giant institutions. They can be small, they can be private, they can be sculpture parks. So of course there is economic growth which leads to collecting, but even in a down market, we see that it just leads to people selling that artwork, right? Because there's only so much supply in the art world. There's only so many Picassos, there's only so many Monets. So whether or not economically the world is in an upswing or a downswing, there is always going to be art, and there will always be people protecting that art. Because I think we don't ever really own a work of art.
No.
We just get to take care of it for a while.
We never really own anything. We don't even really own real estate. I mean, what does it mean? We own it on paper. I mean, we leave it all behind. We don't even own the clothes we wear, really, because we leave it all behind.
Yeah.
But still, it's nice to have art and those things that bring some beauty to our souls and to our emotions. And on that note, Montana, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show today. If some of our viewers would like to get in touch with you, is there a website or somewhere where they could?
Our website is www.heatherjames.com, and you can go on there and click contact.
Lovely. It's been a joy having you on the show, and thank you for sharing your insight. We've all learned a little bit more about art and its current revitalization.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Tarik, I am so pleased you're on the show, because we can't do a show in Hudson and not understand about its architecture. You are a world-renowned architect, and I'm so thrilled you're on the show. And tell us about Hudson.
Well, you know, it's a pleasure being here, yeah? Now, when you talk about Hudson, I'd like to take off from where Montana left. Now, the Hudson Valley is really, really special. It's historic in many, many ways. But I'd like to start by, when she mentioned the Hudson River painter capturing light and color, there was a very significant painter that built the Olana house, Frederick Church. And Frederick Church had a nephew. His name was Lockwood de Forest. Yeah? And Lockwood de Forest was a partner of the Nehru family, the Hate Singh family, to be precise. And it's very interesting, all the woodwork in Burmatique was made in the Hate Singh family in Kashmir, and then shipped to America and put in the Olana house, in Frederick Church's house. It was also put in the Carnegie Mansion, the Kennedy Mansion, and he was part of the New York Decorative Arts movement, yeah, which was really a Hudson Valley movement. Yeah. This town was formed by the Dutch. Like Martin Van Buren currently was the President of America. He was the man that started the Democratic Party in 1830, 1840.
It all started here.
It all started here, in fact, about 10 miles away from here. The Martin Van Buren estate is in Kinderhook, which is like part of the Hudson Valley. Now, with having Martin Van Buren there, this town really took off here.
So our show today is on health and revitalization. So as an architect, please tell us how architecture and health are connected. Is there more building where societies are healthier, or where societies are healthy, there's more building?
Well, you know, what I feel is really happening is that a city, a town that was lost in the 60s and in the 70s is gradually coming up. And the beauty of that is there's restoration happening, so the quality of life is getting better. For instance, there was a button factory right across in Hudson,
Yes.
run by a Bangladeshi family. Huh? Now this Bangladeshi family got about 50 families from Dhaka over to the town of Hudson. Now, then what happened is 10 years later, the Bangladeshi went bankrupt. Mr. Ahmed went bankrupt. So what did these 50 families do? They moved in to the houses to the north of, actually the west side of, on Warren Street actually, and they started to have their own shops and gradually got more and more and more sophisticated. And when I came in, there used to be a little shop called the Sana Bakery. Now the Sana Bakery is now a gourmet shop.
And your daughter is called Sana.
My daughter's called Sana, after the city of Sana in Yemen.
Wow. So you're saying that healthy societies create good architecture, like we saw when Rome was flourishing, architecture. So it's always the human spirit that leads.
It is the human spirit that leads. The beauty of it is that today what's happening is that each one is talking about his own little kingdom. The beauty of, they're like so many small candles of light in Hudson.
And on that note, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for enriching our viewers. And I've learned so much, and you know I love architecture. And thank you, Tarik.
Hey, thank you, Meera.
Big hug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will soon end this episode on revitalization. I hope the collective thoughts on this show have given you some ideas to make some revitalizing changes in your life. Closing quote is from Sadhguru. With every single action we perform, with every thought and emotion we generate, we can create a better situation for ourselves and those around us. Until next week, I wish you abundant health and a revitalized life. Om Shanti and Namaste.